Hi, everyone. Welcome. Greetings. It's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be interviewing one of my personal heroes, one of the last journalists and real editors and journalists standing, Jim Hoft of the Gateway Pundit. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks so much, Naomi. It's really a privilege to be with you today.
Thank you. So, Mr. Hoft is the founder and editor of the Gateway Pundit, as I mentioned, which is one of the top conservative news outlets in America. I'm going to editorialize right there and say, in my view, one of the top news outlets doing real journalism. Mr. Hoft was awarded the Reed Irving Accuracy in Media Award in 2013 and is the proud recipient of the Breitbart Award for Excellence in Online Journalism from the Americans for Prosperity Foundation in May 2016. And they've broken story after story that of incredible relevance, ranging from environmental disasters to political corruption. And the reason I wanted to talk to Mr. Hoft specifically today is an unbelievable story you've broken that should be national and international news about vote corruption and an investigation in Michigan. Will you tell us about that, please?
Certainly, and thank you for that kind introduction. So we came across this story a couple of weeks ago, Naomi, and we were shocked when we heard about it. I couldn't believe it. It actually happened back in October of 2020. And at the time, there was an investigation. This happened in Muskegon, Michigan. There was an investigation into this pile of registrations that were turned in at the local city clerk's office. Muskegon is a city of 38,000. And what happened was they had someone bring in a pile of 8,000 to 10,000 registrations October of 2020, weeks before the election. Of course, that's going to send up red flags because, again, they only have 38,000 people in the city. So we're talking about another 30% of the city population. Somebody's bringing in these registrations. Immediately, they saw that several of these registrations had, addresses that weren't real. Many of them had the same signature. They could tell it was the same person signing all these signatures. So they were obviously fraudulent. They started an investigation. They turned it over to the state.
Excuse me, who's they at this point?
So the city clerk, her name is Ann Meisch, and this was a red flag for her. She contacted the city police. They contacted the state police, and the state police then contacted, I believe it was the Attorney General's office in Michigan. This was in 2020. They did an investigation and they turned it over to the FBI. And that was the last we heard of it. That was the last anyone heard of it. In fact, as we looked, we're starting to see a pattern here, and I hope your audience is aware of this. But as we looked back, there was one article written at the time, little publication, kind of just sugar-coated what was going on. That was it. The media in Michigan, nothing, not a peep, not a word. So this disappeared down the memory hole. And if it wasn't for a source contacting us and contacting our friends, Phil O'Halloran, who is now he's with the Michigan GOP. He was with his own organization. But if he wouldn't have been contacted, we would have no idea this story had happened. So we started looking into it. The officer who wrote the report, Mike Anderson, Lieutenant Mike Anderson, wrote an 80-page report on his investigation. It's very thorough, and as you read it, it's like it's such an amazing story. They went to one of the offices where they were creating these registrations, and which happened to be on the other side of the state, and north of Detroit. Muskegon is in the western side of Michigan, by Lake, I think it's by Lake Michigan. So they went into this office. They found guns, they found silencers, they found burner phones, they found bags of gift cards, like prepaid cash cards.
Oh my God.
They found T-shirts for another organization, and then of course they found these registrations, around the rooms, half complete, in boxes, whatever.
My gosh.
So talk about a crime scene. They also had one person.
Jumping in, where's the evidence of this?
Excellent. So I was going to mention they do have the name of one person that they had redacted from the report throughout, except one place. Brianna Hawkins was this person's name, and she also had brought in then another 2,500 into the Muskegon office later after the. So we're talking. You know what's interesting too, Naomi, is they don't even have the exact number. You would think they would have the exact number. They're saying 8 to 10,000, and then another 2,500.
Oh my
and so
gosh.
this is there's so many questions that are left unanswered.
Right.
Anyway, no arrests. They actually have this name of this individual. They know the organization that dropped it off, GBI Strategies, and there has been no arrests at all in this in the past 3 years. So we announced this, and so we start learning more. We had a couple of our contributors, actually our attorneys, went to Muskegon, went to the city hall. They were able to talk to Ann Meisch, who they said was the city clerk, who they said was very friendly. You know, she didn't want to talk though. She said she's not supposed to talk. And then they talked to the captain of police there. Same thing, and we believe it's the FBI who's told them to be silent about this investigation because it's ongoing. Even though, is it really ongoing? We have no idea. It went into this black hole at the FBI. And so I also personally called Lieutenant Mike Anderson. And that was a day or so after we broke our first report. And he told me that he sounded a little bit standoffish, you know, which I understand. This is a huge story. And it certainly could affect his career one way or another. And so he was like, if you have questions, just contact this communication number he gave me. And I said, okay. And then I started asking him questions anyway. And he did tell us the first thing he said was, I stand by my report. I stand by. He's not backing down from this amazing report he put together. And this investigation that obviously took hundreds of man hours because he was all over the state. He had other people helping him. And it's a very detailed report. So that's what we found out from him. But he was hesitant to talk. And he did say that this group, GBI Strategies, also is working in every battleground state, is what he told me. Now, GBI Strategies is, we did some more research on this organization. And it is a organization, the director, Gary Bell, has headquarters, it looks like in Tennessee, but when you look up the address, it's a home in Tennessee. Not a big fancy home, no, you know, nice home. They also have an address in Washington, D.C., a mailing address. It's called a mailing address, but we looked up the, you know, where this is also, and it's a duplex, actually. It's a duplex. So it's very difficult to find any information on this organization. It's also very difficult to find any information on Gary Bell. We looked around, and what's interesting is we do believe that he travels with security. We do believe he admits in his bio that we found that he has GBI Strategies in 20 states. And that he says he advises in another 7 states, and that he is leading 70 different organizations around the country, which is very curious, you know. And I'm not an expert in this field, but I assume that they're changing names on different organizations as they go in different states. Anyway, so that's where this has led us to this point.
Can I jump in with some questions just to date, basically, about what you shared? Well, I guess my first question is this mind-blowing, explosive police report on public record? Can we look at it? Can everyone watching look at it?
We were able to FOIA a copy of the report. So, and
And
we did
is it
put it,
linked?
we do have it posted on a few of our posts, including the original post we put up.
Oh,
So,
wonderful. Okay.
so we do have a copy of it out there. And you know what's amazing is it's pretty lengthy. And so as you look through it, you pick up different pieces, you know, all the time. We also know now that the GBI employee had said they weren't just working on registrations, but then they were helping people fill out their ballots. So then there's all kinds of questions that pop up after that.
Absolutely. And just listening to the questions, if they're helping people fill out their ballots, the questions that are raised are guns and gift cards, right? Like what happens when they go to defenseless or isolated or elderly people or people who don't speak English very well, people who may not be here legally, and say, here, fill out this form in this way. We have no idea what's carrot or stick is being presented at that moment. Let me go to another question. How could GBI Strategies, which I'm assuming is a nonprofit of some kind, right? That's their status. How could they have a role in dropping off official registrations with an official Michigan government agency?
That's a great question. I'm not an expert on 501c3s. I believe it is a 501c3. But very, very good question. It's also interesting. We do believe that they were dropping off registrations at not just the Muskegon office, but we have evidence now that they were dropping off registrations in several offices.
Right.
In fact, we have not reported on this yet, so I'm breaking this on your show.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But we have evidence. We believe that they were dropping these registrations off at least 8 to 10 different offices so far.
In Michigan or other states?
In Michigan alone.
Wow. So that, while I'm thinking now, I'm thinking about groups like the League of Women Voters and Greenpeace. I guess I do realize that nonprofits are allowed to register new voters. And I guess at that point, they're supposed to be vetted carefully by the people who manage the voter rolls to make sure that they're for real. And absolutely, the first red flag I'm reacting to in what you've described is the fact that they found 10% or more like 30% unregistered voters in this tiny community. That's the bottom line, right? So that's what is the likelihood of that? The second thing that really struck me in what you're describing is, you know, as you noted, the carelessness about numbers, 8 to 10,000 or 8 to 12,000. I've just been writing about the 2020 election, where, as you know, I was an advisor to Al Gore, and it was hotly contested. I've written 2 essays now pointing out that what President Trump is being indicted for is and now Alan Dershowitz is at his voice confirming this, is exactly what both Vice President Gore and candidate George Bush Jr. were doing with their lawyers in 2020. So the indictment, in my view, of President Trump is to criminalize questioning voting outcomes, including what you're doing right now and what I'm doing right now, right? The sweep of the indictment really sets a precedent that could make us criminals for raising questions about this. Right. So having said that, you know, going back to 2020, the numbers that determined the presidential outcome in 2020 were as low as triple digits in each county. So if you are, you know, if you're seeing like this cavalier attitude by the police and possibly by the agencies counting the ballots of 8 to 10,000 or 8 to 12,000, those fungible ballots that are not accounted for, registrations, could sway the election. Not to mention the, you know, having found 30% totally unregistered brand new voters in this tiny community could easily sway outcomes, and then scaling up. And the only reason I'm explaining this is for listeners who may not understand how impactful your story is. If GBI Strategies is doing something similar, A, 10 other locations in Michigan, B, in battleground states, then that alone could sway or fix the outcome of future elections. And the last thing I will say, and I've written about this as a CEO of a tech company that deals with government databases, is we don't even know. I'm dying to take a look at those new registrations that were dropped off, because I don't mean to blow people's minds, but literally electronic voting machines count what they're told to count, right? Even if they're not hooked up to the internet, even if there's no tampering, all of which is possible from people overseas or people, in an organization who have access to the back end. If you set an algorithm, like an algorithm could be set to count all those new registrations or every second registration as a democratic vote, even if it isn't, right? That is entirely possible with electronic voting machines. And that could be done through a QR code or through, how it's set up to be scanned or what it's told to scan and what it's told not to scan. It could be taught, for instance, an algorithm so easy could be told to count a vote for a Republican as a ruined ballot. Like that is 1,000% possible. So I'm just throwing that out there because between the nefarious pipeline input of these randomly generated, 8 to 10 or 8 to 12,000 registrations and electronic voting machines that we're not allowed to look at the code of, you literally could have a situation easily in which in 2024 the whole country or 60% of the country could vote for candidate A and candidate B is already the winner.
Oh, I could not have said it any better than you just did. I think what's interesting, and you brought up several points I'd love to comment on. When I started writing back in 2004, 2005, there were some people who were in trouble here in St. Louis where I'm located. And they went to McDonald's and they wrote out a few fraudulent registrations. And they were arrested. We're talking 7 to 10 ballots, so, 7 to 10 registrations, something like that. They were arrested, they were punished, they were fined, they may have seen jail time, right? But it was a big deal and it made headlines.
As it should.
So, if we want free and fair elections, if we want, everyone's talking about democracy, if we want a thriving democracy, then of course you have to have the safeguards. So now we're talking about an individual who's turning in, like we said, 8 to 10,000 registrations that are questionable. Dana Nessel, the Attorney General of Michigan, came out with a statement a week ago Friday. And this was 3 or 4 days after we started our first report. And then we put up reports daily on this. And she had said in her statement that there were 8 to 10,000 suspected fraudulent ballots.
Oh, wow.
So then the next question, she and I told Steve Bannon this, I said, she basically echoed our report. She basically confirmed everything we had been reporting.
Congratulations. That's progress.
Well, it's really interesting though, because we were, of course, they ignored us in Michigan. Then they attack you, then they smear you. And then finally they come out and say you were right. So it's kind of this long, trajectory that we see, we like your experience with COVID. You come out, you say these things, you get attacked, you get smeared, you get silenced. And then a year or two later, unfortunately, it comes out that you were right all along. Mm-hmm. So this is what we saw. It was just it was just within a week's time span.
Wow.
So the question is then, why didn't you arrest this Breonna Hawkins?
Right.
Why was there no arrest? We're talking 8 to 10,000 questionable. She said this, suspected fraudulent registrations. That was her words from the Detroit Press report, which had smeared us a day or two beforehand, and actually smeared us in that report too. But so where's the arrest? If there are no arrests, if people can do, as we all know, if they can get away with lawlessness, they're going to get away with lawlessness. Totally. So nothing has happened. And then at the end of her the statement, it was, according to the Detroit Press, it was, they're turning this over to the FBI again. So didn't you do that 3 years ago? Right. So now you're going to do the same thing. So again, it raises a lot of eyebrows. You're like, what's going on here? Right. Another thing you said I'd like to comment on, and that is, so right now, and you're exactly right, with President Trump, and you and I have been victims of speech violations, right. Misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, right. and now they have other names for, they don't like our speech. But if they're going to make it illegal to talk about elections, which is very suspect, why would you, if you're so confident that your candidate wins, and why would you not want people to look at the results, here's everything, here it is for you? Instead, they're shutting down speech. But what's next?
Right.
This is the thing. They've jumped so far into tyranny that you can't talk about elections. Well, what's stopping them from saying you can't talk about the next mask mandate?
Right.
You know, we were banned and silenced because we questioned these things a couple of years ago. What happens next time then?
Totally.
You know, do they shut down our bank accounts? We've seen that with certain individuals. Are we going to see prison time too? This is what they want with President Trump. They're actually going to put him in prison because of these violations. This is their goal, of course.
Right.
So what happens to the rest of Americans?
Right.
I think that's what's very concerning. I wish people would wake up to that.
Yeah.
But of course, Naomi, we're not getting that from the mainstream news. They're ignoring all of the important questions that we should be really thinking about as Americans.
Absolutely. I mean, what you've just said is so right. One of the first thing that's going to happen, obviously, is that non-anointed candidates will be afraid to run for office because they will face lawfare and possibly prison for doing so, or for questioning the outcomes. And decent chiefs of staff or fundraisers or communication specialists or consultants will be afraid to help that candidate, any candidate in the future that isn't an anointed candidate. It really is a demonstration of, it's like a chilling effect, right? What's happening to President Trump. And I didn't vote for him, but I've come to have a broader view of why he's being persecuted in this completely anomalous way. And I say this as someone who was there observing and participating in 2020 with something almost exactly the same. They're doing it not just to get him out of the way, although that's what banana republics do with opposition candidates on the campaign trail, but also to chill all of us going forward from, running for office, talking about elections, and so on. Now, let me follow up on something you seem to have said. Your story, and I wish I was used to this, but as a journalist, I can never get used to it. The links you sent me, you've got about 4 or 5 stories already about this mind-blowingly important, what could be tip of the iceberg about what happened in 2020 in terms of corruption, but something that certainly bears front page news investigation, globally, right? Because it's so corrupt and so questionable. This has not been picked up by the legacy media. Again, the Detroit Free Press, which used to be a respectable newspaper, smeared you. They've smeared me and invented things about me. And this is not on the front page of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, though it should be. This is Pulitzer Prize level reporting. This is an important story. I guess what I'm saying is, whenever I think about or try to follow up on President Trump's claims that there was widespread fraud in the 2020 election, I come up with a blank, and legacy media and all my loved ones on the left say, if that had been true, there would be evidence. I was struck by something you said earlier, that by having an FBI investigation, it goes down the memory hole because you can't now see what the FBI is doing. No one can talk about it. It's gone, right? So I guess my question to you is could this have happened across the country in other places where possibly President Trump's victory was, or potential victory was, thwarted by similar kinds of wrongdoing that has been similarly swept under the rug by police or FBI investigations that have gone nowhere?
Oh, I absolutely agree with that. And I could give you a couple of different instances. The FBI, of course, had Hunter Biden's laptop since 2019. During that time, President Trump was impeached over talking about Hunter on a call with a foreign leader who actually brought up Hunter, right? Brought up the subject. So he's impeached for that. The FBI was holding information that could have exonerated President Trump from that whole fiasco.
Wow.
So that was one impeachment. Then right before the 2020 election, around the same time in October of 2020, 51 Intel, leaders in the intelligence community came out and said that this story about Hunter having a laptop, it's Russian disinformation. They all knew that was a lie. They put out this statement. There's been polling done, that says that influenced people's votes, or it could have. We know now that, of course, it's Hunter's laptop, and for the record, we were reporting in October of 2020, we actually had access to content from that website, and we were putting up reports, especially Hunter is a exhibitionist who likes to record his sexual escapades, and there are many, right? And so all of this is inside this laptop. So there's another instance that they memory hold this, and the FBI was silent when they knew the truth. There was another investigation, and that was these two truckers, the U.S. Postal Service contract truckers, had reported in, I think it was after the election, they came out and said that, hey, I pulled a trailer full of ballots that were completed ballots, they said. Okay, I'm just saying this is what they said. I don't have, I don't have the results of an investigation. But they said this, and then they said, and I took it from New York and I moved it into Pennsylvania right before the election, and then the trailer disappeared. So they said this, they turned it over to the FBI and Bill Barr, and then we find out actually this year, a couple months ago, the United States Postal Service puts out the report 2 or 3 years later saying there is validity in this. We can't find this trailer. The trailer disappeared.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, it was memory hold for 3 years, and then you find out that there was actually something there. This wasn't two guys making it up or getting paid by somebody. They actually saw something. Right. So yes, the FBI has been involved. Yes, the DOJ, I believe, has been involved in suppressing these accounts. There was, by the way, in Michigan alone, we took depositions after the election. People, our attorneys did. They recorded them. Just devastating experiences these people went through who were election workers. They saw the late night ballots come in the arena at 3:30. After all the ballots were counted, all of a sudden here comes this van full of ballots. They don't know where it came from. They don't know where they could have been from, because you were supposed to have all the ballots taken from the drop boxes by 8 p.m. the night before. All of a sudden, these ballots come in at 3:30. No questions about this. We actually reported on this at the time, Naomi, on election day, because we had people in the room at the TCF Center, the arena there in Detroit, who said that this had happened. And so we reported on it. The media said, oh, no, that didn't happen. That's fake news. Well, then we got the video, which took us till end of January after the inauguration. We finally get the video from the TCF Center. We go through it, thousands of hours. We find where the van drove in, and you probably maybe have seen this video. The van drives in at 3:30, unloads 61 boxes of ballots. Then it comes back. It actually came in twice, and it comes back a second time with another 16 or 17 boxes of ballots. So we were absolutely correct in our reporting. It took us months to confirm this, but so there's an instance, that's never been looked at, that, so I think there are situations that did happen that at least should have been looked at. We're in a lawsuit right now. We're being sued by two women and this is along election lines, two women in Georgia, because we reported their names. We identified them because they were in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution the day before, right? So it's like, it wasn't that hard. Somebody sent us a tip, and okay, this is these two women. We put it in an article. These are the women who actually they got rid of all the observers out of the State Farm Center, and then all of a sudden, an hour later, this group of 5 people go back in. They start grabbing these ballots, suitcases. We call them suitcases. It makes some people crazy that we say that, but it looks like a suitcase with a roller. So they drag it out. They open it. They start putting ballots like that they have to hold with 2 hands.
Oh my
They
God.
shove them through the machine, they grab them again.
Oh
They
my
shove them
God.
through the machine, they grab them again. They shove
Oh,
them through the machine. This happened at 3 deaths. So we reported on this, and now we're being sued because we
unbelievable.
identified, and these women are very hurt and they can't go out in public, and they're
Isn't
blaming
truth
us.
a defense? Like
But
if it, you
here's
have
the
to be,
thing.
yeah,
Here's the thing about that. The media will say they'll say, oh, these women they're devastated, they've been harmed, they're so hurt. But they're not going to show you the video that we
right.
have of them
I've been
actually.
doing that. Wow.
Yeah, we're not talking, grab a few and stick them through. We're
Right.
talking you have to grab them with 2 hands to put them through. We
Unbelievable.
also have evidence from that same State Farm Center that after they fed them through 3 times, put them in a bin, someone else comes over 20 minutes later, grabs that bin and shoves it through his machine. So I think, here's what's interesting, Naomi. Yes, everyone would agree there is no fraud. We haven't seen anything. Well, if we haven't seen anything, there must not be anything.
Right, right.
But they forget that the media is just such patsies for the regime,
right,
that they're not going to show them this. I think if anyone saw this, Democrat or Republican, they would say this is not right and should stop.
Well, let me jump in there again as an eyewitness. If the 2 campaigns fighting for the presidency in the year 2000 had not deployed their lawyers and researchers and grassroots organizations and people, up the chain of command at the state level for both Democrats and Republicans to look for and identify and bring to light anomalies, none of those anomalies would have surfaced either. In other words, it takes looking, and that's what we're supposed to do in a democracy, is count every vote. And if there's any report of anomalies, we're supposed to stop right there, as President Trump did. As you're pointing out, this should have stopped everything, right? It should have. To count and adjudicate every last vote. And that's what we did in 2000. And it took 6 weeks for the Supreme Court to decide who had won the election. And literally votes were counted and recounted, and they were counted publicly. So I'm with you. You're describing something so corrupt in our elections process. We have to imagine that if you've identified 2 such egregious examples, and you have video evidence in one case and an eyewitness coming forward in another
case, video in both cases, then we have to assume these are not the only 2 places in the United States. It stands to reason that this may have happened, and real journalists would report this out and follow up and find out where, if anywhere else, this happened and what impact, if any, it had on the 2020 election. So this is truly nauseating. I just want to end. Unfortunately, I'd love to come back and follow up and hear more as you continue to break this important story. I want to thank you for the incredible journalism that the Gateway Pundit is doing. Again, I was like propagandized, the Gateway Pundit, right? But it turns out you're doing journalism that the New York Times, doesn't dare to do. And you should be commended for it. I guess I just want to end by saying, what recourse, listening to this, what recourse do people have, and how can people help you? And what, does the Gateway Pundit have an activist goal of some kind? If you continue to showcase corruption and the FBI continues to stonewall, what can you do? What can people do to move this forward? Well, thank you so much. I think with this reporting here, we're going to continue. We have, again, some explosive reports that will come out this week. It's interesting, Naomi, and I'm sure you're going to find this, and you have found this, but as you report the truth, more and more people come to you, even though the media has smeared us in any way they can. And I would even suggest that some of the players on our Wikipedia page who smear us, and by the way, some of those items, we never said these things, right? And we can't get in and say, hey, we never said this. So they have a list of things, but I would suggest that there's some different players who have been inside of our Wikipedia page and are adding different things. But if you tell the truth and you have the video, right, people learn to trust you. And so our numbers have been strong for several years, in fact, growing. And I think this year we'll even have So far, we're on track to have our best year ever, which has been, which has been a small miracle, really, considering the amount of filth that the mainstream throws at us. But as people see the truth and they hear the truth and they know they're not getting the truth from this mainstream. I mean, it's so obvious today. I think it will help you. It will help Gateway Pundit going forward. And that's certainly what I believe. I also want to say one thing too. Thank God for you, Naomi Wolf, because it's so refreshing. And by the way, this city clerk, Ann Meisch, we found out she's a Democrat.
Oh, wow.
But she contacted the police and said, hey, there's something wrong here.
Yeah, good for her.
And that's how we all must stand. And because this isn't about politics. And as I, am so disgusted with this Republican Party and the Democrat Party, it's like, I think most Americans just want, really the vast majority just want to hear the truth.
Right.
They want a society that's safe and they can raise their families in and have success. And so we have to get some of these things corrected. But I'm so glad that your voice is out there.
Thank you so much. And I guess it's a chicken and egg thing, right? With new leadership in the White House that is ethical, and I'm not being partisan there. Presumably a new Justice Department can go after these wrongdoers and shine a light on these crimes. Right? We're not necessarily in an endless cul-de-sac with the FBI and the current memory hole. Well, I thoroughly agree with you, Jim Hoft, that step one is sunshine, and Gateway Pundit is bringing it. I can't wait to see what you're breaking next. Everyone listening, this is the most important story. You don't get great journalism for free forever. Gateway Pundit, I'm going to say it, you're too polite to say it. Gateway Pundit has fixed costs to get the truth out to you, to get this great reporting out to you. So go support the Gateway Pundit, donate, subscribe, all the things. And Jim Hoft, thank you so much for your journalism. It is bracing to hear it, and we'll keep following this important story. We really give you so much kudos for what you've done today.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout, and I just want to give a thank you to our sponsor, The Wellness Company, whose chief medical team includes some of our most respected colleagues, including Dr. Peter McCullough and Dr. Harvey Risch. So The Wellness Company offers COVID and vaccine injury treatments, including ivermectin, as well as dietary supplements based on the guidance of these noted physicians and epidemiologists, such as Spike Support, which is designed to help combat spike protein. So click on the link below or head to dailyclouthealth.com to purchase their products. You can also gift healthcare to your loved ones, which is something I've been doing. I'm excited about The Wellness Company being able to offer medical advice without the pressure of big pharma. Please use the code DailyClout for 10% off. Thank you again to The Wellness Company, our sponsor. Bye-bye.